Hey, this is Faye, and today I'll go back to a topic that I touched upon in my confusing lore bits video, but where I really felt that I owed myself and the rest of you to dive further into it. So today we're gonna talk about the 12 gods of Eorzea. Now, before we begin, I should probably specify this is not a speculation video on what might be happening about them in the future, but I am as giddy as a goat to know what the heck is gonna happen, because in Endwalker we're gonna get a full raid series devoted to this, and I really cannot wait to see this, but we don't have that yet, and while we do have some hints, I figured, well, maybe it would also just be good to focus on the myths and the legends that we do already have, and that I will assume that they'll pay homage to and sort of incorporate into those raids. So, today is gonna be about that, and first off, we need to establish that this belief system is fundamental. We know that they have a special tie to Eorzea, but this is not just present Eorzea we're talking about, because we also know that there are ancient elegant texts that date worship of these dozen deities back before their own culture, so this belief is age-old. According to the not local Mughals, which is clearly an unbiased and unquestionable source of information, Kupo, the Mughals served the 12 while they were still chilling in the early world in peace before the time of the wandering races. And I guess that would probably be us. And I mean, why wouldn't we believe something this fluffy, right? Right? So, I mean, clearly the Mughals are the closest to divinity, Kupo. Now that said, today we're gonna go through the Pixie Book version of the Chilean astrologian and theologian Lufon's work on the gods, alongside some of the myths and legends that you can find in different items or places, description of different places in the game. I've just meddled it together and tried to make sense of it, so here we go. Okay, so in the beginning there was neither light nor darkness. There was no time, there was no nothing. There was just the world. Like, there wasn't anything, there was just the world. Which I guess is how the Eorzeans envisioned nothingness? Anyway, Althyk the Keeper is the first god, and he steps out of the world, and he is often depicted as an austere emperor wielding a mithril great axe. And he arrives out of the world, and when he does that, then so does time and weight, which I'm reading as gravity. And this is how the land masses were created. And as he stepped out and stepped forward, then so time started stepping forward and moving forward. Then comes Nymeia. Who is a literal baby god, and she cries a lake of tears. Now, she's a mewling babe, but Althyk is kinda alone here, so he takes her under his wing. There's nobody else to help out here. And she grows and is cared for by Althyk, and as she grew, then so did their love for one another, until she later became his divine partner. Now, I need to put this out there, that if this happened on anything but a divine level, this would be considered grooming and gross as hell, but we have all read some old myths and legends of different really old religions, so I guess this sounds perfectly par for the course, right? Nymeia, thankfully, isn't known as the Crimea Lake crybaby, but is instead often depicted as a weaver with a white silken veil. And she and Althyk gets the twins, Azeyma and Menphina, the sun and the moon. Azeyma is often portrayed as a noble lady with a golden fan, and Menphina is depicted as a maid, holding a skillet, so let's just give her a frying pan here. After a long while, Thaliak joins the party, and he arrives with wisdom itself, which is pretty damn cool, I think. He is the reserved, scholarly sort of person, and he carries an ash staff. I have tried to say this like 5 times, but I think I got it this time around. Okay, moving on. And he looked at the lake that Nymeia had cried and said that is a waste of good resources, that it's just kind of lying there doing nothing. So he drew out rivers from it so that it could irrigate and benefit the whole realm. And Azeyma looks at this clever dude and she sort of goes, smart's is kinda hard. And she professes her love for him, and I mean, why would you turn this down, right? So they hook up and they get 2 daughters, Llymlaen, who found out that it would be really fun to spread Granny Nymeia's lake around until it became a sea, and she is very often depicted as a strong fisherwoman wielding a long-bladed harpoon, and Nophica, who was lonely and just wanted somebody to play with, and I guess where other people start talking to themselves or they will make imaginary friends, Nophica was an overachiever and she just simply created her own beings, so she created life itself. She is depicted as a jubilant farmer carrying a steel scythe. And so life spread into the world, and after a while another god wandered in. He didn't come from the world, because that was dormant at the time, so nobody knew who he was or where he came from, but he looked like a carefree wanderer, carrying a yew bow. He was Oschon. And where he went, mountains rose. Let's just take a moment to reflect on that, because that, I mean, thinking about that must actually be kind of annoying in the long run. However, with mountains now in the mix, now cold air could flow down from the mountains and then push the warm air back up again, and now we have wind currents that could carry life even more around, sort of take the water and the ground life and just put it into the skies. I'm thinking this is a way of saying birds, but we are in a world where there are literally flying fish and flying whales, so I don't know, it could be that it just literally took life from the sea and just put it into the skies, who knows. But anyways, those winds grabbed the heart of Llymlaen, who fell for Oschon, but seeing how he was always on the move, they never settled and had a family of their own. Is the official version that you can find in Lufon's work of this particular interaction. But if you listen to Lominsan legends, then Oschon was a little bit of a cad, and he happened upon Llymlaen as she was bathing, and the Navigator didn't take kindly to him failing to make his presence known, so she threw a dagger at him, and I mean, this essentially scared Oschon off, and this made him seek out Menphina and take her as his lover instead. So at this point in time, all of the gods are playing with their toys, and they're all just using their powers willy-nilly, and it's a little bit chaotic to be in the playground where all the kids are playing like this unhindered. Oschon is rising and falling mountains everywhere, Thaliak is spreading his rivers all over the place, and Llymlaen is just going see, right, just everywhere see. And so what happens when the kids can't play nice? Well, you invoke the mama, who now has to intervene. So Nymeia is looking at this and she is pissed. And I don't know what your mom or grandma did when she was pissed, but I mean, I think Nymeia outclasses most people because she plucks a great big comet from the skies, throws it to the ground and gives it life, and bam! We now have Ralgr to keep the bloody peace and destroy the excess of her children's creation and bring harmony to the realm. Now, Ralgr is known as the Destroyer, but he is essentially a very angry babysitter, and he looks like a magi with a bronze staff. My Latin nut will tell me that this is supposed to be magus, because it's singular, but in the lore book it says magi, so we're gonna call it magi, but just... yes, down with you. Alright. And we're lucky we have him, because, well, there is another problem about to happen just around the corner, which essentially is a problem that ends up becoming his responsibility. So, things are quiet for a bit, but then the world woke up again, and it spat out 2 other gods, Byregot and his younger sister Halone. Now, Nymeia takes one look at these 2 untamed and ambitious kids, and she went, oh shit, and immediately made them wards of Rhalgr, because she did not trust that they wouldn't just wreak havoc upon the realm that she had just fixed. Byregot was a builder by nature, so maybe it really wasn't such a big brain move on Nymeia's part to make him the ward of a man who is literally called the Destroyer. But Byregot ends up being disappointed in Rhalgr, and he seeks out Thaliak, who is always happy to pour out his rivers of wisdom to whoever drink from them. So in the end, Byregot becomes a great craftsman, putting theory into practice. This is why Byregot is depicted as an ardent smith, wielding a 2-headed hammer. Halone, the relentless warrioress with a bronze great shield, and I'm just gonna stick her here with an extra spear just so that we can recognize her from the statues, was a bit more open to her new stepfather's destructive tendencies, but she also grew restless, and she eventually ends up on a field trip with Oschon, and she found a new hobby: challenge and meticulously murder every living creature she came across. Peachy. She perfected the art of killing, and since death hadn't really been a thing, let alone a problem before, there were all of a sudden a lot of souls of Nophica's critters that were bobbing aimlessly around in the realm, unable to find peace anywhere. Nophica, who created all of these living things to play with her, we must remember, of course, wasn't the happiest of campers about Halone just literally going on a killing spree and killing every living thing she came across. And things got a little bit heated. At one point, Nophica straight up demands that Halone fight her instead, but the Fury just blankly ignored her and snubbed her. In order to prevent a bitch fight, and feeling quite a bit responsible for starting all of this shit, Oschon figured that he'd be smart and fix the mess that he'd started. So he calls forth magma from one of his many mountains, and when it is cooled, it became the dual-natured Nald'thal. Now, I do not know how cooling magma births a god. But hey, weirder shit has happened in religion, and we did just have a living comet before that became a god, so let's just roll with it. Nald'thal is a set of twins who were then put in charge of taking care of the souls of all of the living things and provide them with a nice and cozy afterlife. Well, that latter part, I guess, is mostly Thal's job, because Nal tend to the needs of the living, where Thal tends to the needs of the dead. They are usually portrayed as a set of discerning merchants carrying a balance or a scale, and they will weigh your soul. But now that the souls had somewhere to go when they were tragically killed off, Nophica was calmed down, and this made the 2 warring ladies enter a truce. At this point, the pantheon was complete, and they looked at the world and all of the people in it, and they decided that the Eorzeans likely had things covered. And so they created the 7th heaven, where they went up to look at their creation. Now, while it doesn't outright state this in the creation myth, I will assume that the 7th heaven was created after the 6 others had been made. And overall it goes that if you lived after a certain god's virtues, you might be admitted into the heaven, while if you were guilty of some of their sins, then you'd be thrown into the corresponding hell, and then after suffering through that, you needed to suffer through the remaining 5 upper hells too, to witness the sins of your fellow man, and then you would have your heart weighed at the gates of the 7th hell. If the heart was heavy with remorse, then you'd go up, up and away. But if not, then good luck, because the 7th hell sucks forever. Alright, just to run through the different realms that you might visit as a particularly pious or pricky Eorzean upon your death, we have the Heaven of Fire, which is a beautiful city in the skies, built by golden bricks crafted by Nald'thal and then fired in Azeyma's sun, and here lives the just, the honest, and the philanthropic. The Hell of Fire, however, is made from the rubble that was left over when the heaven building project was done, and it was cast into the dark pit and it was set aflame. And so, if you wrongly judge your peers, or if you trick your customers, or if you take bribes, you will be burning here. Toasty. For the Heaven of Water, it is said that Nymeia took a frozen star and melted it, and then poured that water into Thaliak's ewer. He then imbued the water with the essence of knowledge, and then he poured it out to create a river of knowledge. Scholars, teachers, entrepreneurs, and inventors all reside by the banks of this river. The Hell of Water, however, is a stagnant pond, which forever drowns deceivers, mountebanks, or, well, I guess that's counterfeiters, and false prophets. There is, of course, also a Heaven and Hell of Wind, and the Heaven of Wind is placed on a towering mountain range, where Oschon looks upon the endless sea ruled by Llymlaen. And here you will find explorers, adventurers, mountain climbers, saints, and those who rescue people. However, the Hell of Wind is plagued by terrible tempests, and here you will find mountain bandits, defilers of the land, and sea pirates who are super busy having their flesh torn from their bones by the unforgiving winds. When it comes to the Heaven and Hell of Ice, Menphina and Halone built a lofty palace of ice. Menphina provided the frozen moonbeams that were then carved by Halone's spear, and in these halls reside the epic heroes and gallant knights, the benevolent and the faithful. There are icicles on this palace, and they fall straight into the pit, and they create a hell of ice where cowards, deserters, and adulterers live. The Heaven and Hell of Lightning are ruled by Rhalga and Byregot, and the heaven is a towering clockwork spire that Byregot built, with metal forged from a comet, and the tower is powered by Rhalga's 11 bolts. Engineers, architects, revolutionaries, and conquerors of all things evil live in this clockwork tower. The 11 charged fragments of the comet plummet to the pit and form a hell of lightning, which is a place of damnation for vandals, slumlords, and warmongers. And I am getting flashbacks to the Thunderplanes with that description. You know, the Thunderplanes from Final Fantasy X. So, yeah, dodge. That is hell. That is actual hell. And lastly, we have the Heaven and Hell of Earth, where it is described that Nophica planted a sapling, and then her grandfather Althyk bent time so that it would grow into a mighty tree instantly, offering shade to the farmers, naturalists, historians, and archaeologists. The hell is where the leaves fall, being crushed under unforgiving roots alongside with liars, thieves, defilers of nature, and revisionists who would corrupt the true telling of history. So beware how you tell the tales of old, and I guess I should really recheck the script. Alright. I have no idea how future me will edit this down to the size where it can be used for a video. But I am sure that I am scowling at the screen right now and cursing the me who wrote or recorded this damn script. For this, I started out compiling the lore from the quest text and from the lore book like I usually do, and at one point I actually came across this really fantastic resource called Explorers Guild Wikia, where there are a lot of things that I had already gathered and listed, and quite a few extra stories too. And I will link this alongside with some other awesome lore pages, like for instance Merc's Menagerie and the lore forum down below. I've also linked some other resources where people have fished out the in-game item texts for several items. And a lot of the items in the game are naturally references to or give nod to or tell a different story about the gods or are named after them, and so there are a lot of little nuggets of lore in there too. Either way, these are the bare-bone basics that we have to work with going into Endwalker. Legends and myths that are known to the average Eorzean, and the beliefs that they hold about the 12 deities and the creation myth. I hope that you found some of this interesting, and if we ever want to make a video where we go into details on each of the deities, well, let's just say that at this recording point, I have cut away 75% of the damn script to make it this short. This was over 12 pages long when I started, and now it's down to 4. But that is a project for future me. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. May whatever god that seemed most appealing, or, well, failing that, least offensive, guide your steps today. And may you have a really lovely day. Bye. It's been a while since I put one of these in here, but if you stuck around for the very end, I have a few things to talk to you about while the in-game Fae is walking around to visit the different stones of the different deities that you can find in the world. I don't know who will need to hear this today. Maybe it's you, or maybe it's you, or maybe it's even myself today, I don't know. But you are enough. You might think that it's just a matter of time before people figure out that you're not as funny as they think you are, or as nice as they think you are, or as smart as they think you are. And you might just have convinced yourself that you're just really secretly pulling the wool over their eyes, and maybe you didn't intend to, but somehow you managed to do this, and what will now happen if they find out that you're not as great a person as they think you are? I have news for you. You're not a master manipulator hiding amongst the real and functional people and cheating them into thinking that you're a much better person than you are. You're not outsmarting the world, and the whole world is not blind. No. The truth is much more simple, really. You're enough. You're good enough. You're smart enough. You're kind enough. Give people credit for not being blind and stupid, and just accept that maybe they view you differently than what you've been conditioned to view yourself as. You're good enough. And that's good enough. And I hope that you will have a really lovely day. And take care.